Hi, I'm Thom Bowers,
And I'm Matt Meldrum.
and we are Sons of Nothing. And we are here to talk about the 20th anniversary of our album, One Left Turn.
And I need to do a little bit of preparation before I'm ready to talk about it. So I am Googling Sons of Nothing, One Left Turn.
Okay, you might get a hit on eBay. Last I checked, there were a few OG discs still
Let
available.
me let me see the shopping. Nope, nothing is shopping. Bummer. Okay.
Are you Googling
I'm
because this is foreign territory to you?
I'm Googling because I don't remember what the songs are.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Uh, but you're not wrong to be wanting to gather more information because this record it's kind of a strange beast, and it in a lot of ways, and it hasn't had a wide release for a very long time. We're working on that right now, but we thought since it's been 20 years, we kind of do what we did on the debut record and go back and reminisce a little bit with some added bonus flavor to that, in that you were actually there when we made this record. So,
Yeah. And my memory of it may serve as well as any information I gave for the debut redo efforts too.
yeah, well, we're rolling the dice. We're going to see what happens. So One Left Turn was released in the summer of 2003. It was recorded between December 2002 and somewhere in the spring. We took a few passes at it, if I recall. We did a little bit here and a little bit there, and it took a while to kind of get all the pieces in place.
Yeah, I remember doing shopping for studios when I was unwilling to admit that I had everything that I needed for the band. This was when I was just brand new to the band and still feeling my way through.
That's
Not sure
true.
I even want to hang out with you guys. And then you say, hey, let's produce this album. I recall hitting a few studios in the Salt Lake area and settling on Toby's. Goodness me, I don't remember what the name of the studio was, but it was Toby's studio, and starting the recording from there. But before that, there was some rehearsing, I don't remember how much prep did we have before we went into the studio.
Quite a bit of prep. I mean, we did well to go way back. So two important things happened to Sons of Nothing in 2002. The first thing was that we got invited to play the Flyin Zion festival, which this is a thing that happened. The guy who was responsible for booking it, this guy Carl Roman, had seen us play back in 2001, and we were throwing some Pink Floyd songs into our shows at that point because Tim Hollinger and I were both Floyd fans. It was one of the things we bonded over. And he said, how would you guys like to come to a full night of Pink Floyd? Because Flyin Zion was this sort of hippie fest, a lot of psychedelic music, jam band kind of stuff. They thought Floyd would go over really well. So we said, yeah, that'll be fun. But at that time, the lineup of Sons of Nothing was a trio, and we needed some extra musicians to fill out the sound. So the second important thing happened, which was Tim's first choice to bring out more of what we were capable of, was a young Matt Meldrum. So we met with
And
you.
I remember him calling me and saying, hey, do you want to come and do this gig? And I remember turning him down.
Yeah. Well, we actually had a meeting. We all went out to dinner and we chatted, and you were like, this sounds really, really cool, but for various time and commitment reasons, it just wasn't going to happen for you. And so we found some other folks and we did the show without you, but we couldn't let it go. And so when it turned out that this Floyd thing turned out to be sort of a fun side project that we wanted to continue, Tim was absolutely adamant that you had to be involved. So we knocked on your door again, and finally you were able to, make it happen. And we started rehearsing, and it was sounding really good. And then one day you were playing, I don't remember what in rehearsal. I think it was Old and Wise, or it was an Alan Parsons song, I think, or a Marillion song. I can't remember which one. And I was like, and immediate was like, okay, we're getting him in the original band too. Like, this is all going to happen. We've the final puzzle pieces in place, and you and I have been joined at the hip ever since.
That is true. That's when we found a shared, it was almost immediate when we started realizing how many musical influences we had in common, that our musical vocabulary was just, instant from that time.
Yeah, and you were the most talented person I'd ever met with the least ego about that talent that I'd ever met. And I was like, well, this is going to be great. It was just that was the start of something very cool. And we did the Floyd things for a while, and we got to the end of 2002, and I looked around at the lineup we had and thought, yeah, we need to make a record. Now that we have a band for real, we need to go make a record. So we, like you said, started shopping around. We went Sound Image Studios was the name of the place where we did all the basic tracks. And it was my first time in a real recording studio. I was like so incredibly excited. This whole thing just thrilled me to be doing, because the first record had been completely DIY, with just like an engineer in his house and whoever we could coax into the studio that day. But this was time like we had a bunch of guys who'd played a bunch of shows together, and we were bonded, and we were on a mission, and we were going to make this thing. And it was exactly what I wanted to be doing at that point, and I was thrilled. I'm guessing for you, it was a little more casual than that.
It was a little more casual because, I was still feeling my way in. Because as I recall, I was there at first, just, like you said, doing the Floyd show stuff. And then you started bringing me into the original stuff. But it hadn't been that long, me playing the original songs with you guys before we decided to do this. And so we went in with all songs brought in before me. I guess Stolen would be the exception. It was kind of being worked as we went. But all these other songs were ones that you had done to more or less of an extent. And so my role, I'm like, okay, I'm helping produce, I'm helping to record, I'm playing on this thing, and sure, it'll be a good time. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was another year at least before you and I started writing together, which is when the whole thing really came together. It was it was one of those like strike while the iron is hot things, and we all had a few songs sort of laying around from previous bands or whatever that just never got recorded for some reason. And we thought it would be easier to just do that right now, to have something we could say was ours as a statement, and then move on with the next thing that we would all participate in writing from the ground up. So it was a little bit of both things, still sort of in the world of the debut record, but pushing forward. Is very transitional and very loopy. And I think that's reflected in the songs that we chose, which, we're always a little eclectic, but this is just weird. These songs don't belong together.
They don't belong together. And even the way that we perform them, I think, exposes where we were at as a band at that time, particularly from my standpoint, trying to feel my way as to where I should sit. It's always interesting to get into a band and play guitar when there's already a guitar player. And so leaning heavily towards keys instead of guitar, and a little bit of guitar there too. But in that vein, Tim was always pretty willing to do whatever served the song too. There wasn't a lot of ego in him when it came to what would be best for the song. Although, of course, when we get into the songs, there was definitely a vision that you had to comply with.
That's true. Tim was a fantastically creative guy, and he was pretty open, to collaborating. But he did have, if he wanted things a certain way, they had to be a certain way. And then when it came to something that wasn't his idea, you had to be really specific with your directions, and he just had a sense of like, that's what songwriting is. So that's how we worked it. And the record is, for that reason and lots of others, kind of fragmented, but it's this, I don't know, it's this fun little oddity. And I'm really happy that we're going to be finally releasing it wide. That's what the other reason we're doing this is, that the record is finally getting wide digital distribution. And we'll talk about that later. But since we're now into the meat of it, I think we should talk about the songs themselves.
Okay.
Track one, Do Me. which on this new release will finally have the proper parenthetical subtitle "Nuner ist so nah," which it was a German for I believe the time is near. Although I ran a Google translate on it once, and I think it actually came out to "He is so near," which I don't know. This is a Tim Hollinger song, so you'd have to ask him exactly what he was going for with that.
Which of course we can't do.
No.
But I do remember at the time, because he was having us sing these words, and for me it was just purely a phonetic thing. Just tell me which vowels I'm hitting, and I'll hit them. But I have two brothers who speak fluent German, and so I threw it in front of them, and I don't remember what they said exactly, but it wasn't what Tim had interpreted it as. I'm like, okay, well, the flavor is there.
Yeah, there is an ominous marching vibe to it, which I think was what the main thing was. Is that the song's about? I believe it's about Tim spent some time abroad and saw some student protests, and this is sort of written partly from his observance and partly trying to get into the point of view of some of the kids in the crowd who are angry about whatever it is they were angry about at that point. And it was a really cool, explosive way to open the record. I think there was a demo for this song. This is in one of Tim's previous bands. This song was originally recorded.
It was an Annie Epiphany song. That was his band, Annie Epiphany.
That's right. Along with a few other songs that we actually played live, but ended up not recording. And this one it always just felt really good. It's got a good groove to it. It has that funky, odd German chorus. And I always loved the big, long, winding guitar instrumental in the middle of it. And this was the first song that we recorded at Sound Image. It was the first song on the first day, and I think we kept the first take of the bass and drums and maybe the rhythm guitar. I can't remember. We laid down all the bed tracks as a unit, no click, which was
those were the good old days.
Those were the good old days. You go and run this thing through some software that measures the BPM. It's not going to measure up exactly on the beat, but it sounds good. I mean, this is the first time, watching Darren Campbell, who was our drummer at the time, play in a studio, and his like power and focus and precision was like right on. I was, Darren is a very excitable kind of guy, and so I was a little nervous going into the studio with him. It's like, is he going to be able to keep it on the track? And he was great. I think we kept almost all of his first takes on these tunes.
Yeah, you always wondered if he was going to turn into Animal from the Muppets, or if he was going to be able to rein it in, and he did.
Yeah, so that was a fun thing. And I remember particularly Tim was messing around with the lyrics as we were doing the take, and he was, making dirty jokes and all this kind of stuff. And everyone was just grinning at each other. And the vibe on that take was so good. And then when it came time to do the overdubs, I remember you playing the keyboards in the studio and Tim playing the lead guitar in the control room at the same time at Sound Image. And
really?
The rest of us were just bopping around the room because it sounded so good. We were just so happy with how it sounded. I always really liked this song. I loved playing it live. We would often open shows with this song. Just very, very cool.
It probably was kind of the first one that we as a unit, with me included anyway, really gelled around and felt the confidence in playing. And, this is where I added the keys, and I do recall Tim like, okay, this is what I want. And it was easy enough because, it's pretty much just an organ that we're hearing on that song, but it tied into what was wanted for the Floyd show, which is, a lot of organ or a lot of piano and things like that. Yeah. So I think that helped fill it out and give it a little upbeat oomph.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
The guitar solo, yeah, that is one of the funnest parts of that song, is the way it kind of just modulates through things. And it's not just, okay, let's tag on another verse and have a guitar solo over it. No, it meanders, and it is so Tim.
Yeah, and the chords just keep changing and winding around, and eventually we make our way back to the tonic. But by that point, the rhythm has changed, and dynamics have changed, and it was this fun instrumental journey in the middle of it, which is great. And especially great for you because the main keyboard part, you're boxed in just a little bit. You're kind of just in that pocket. You're with me. We're just kind of riding that one chord for the most part. So it was fun to break away and have an adventure.
Well, when you talk about that, we recently unearthed the video of that song with the live treatment, and there's so much close-up camera on me hitting that, just hitting that A chord. I'm like, okay, this is really boring. Go to someone else.
But you're into it though. You're committed. You're committed to that chord.
I'm gonna rock that right hand.
That's right. You can do it all over again. What was it decide? Do you think that there's something out there that's better than life? Track 2, Better Than Life. This song came via Darren, and it was a song that one of his older bands played. And I rewrote the lyrics and the melody, and then we kind of put our own spin on it. I think we added some things in the bridge and the solo section, and but Darren had a real specific idea of the form and the shape of it, and had his parts down cold. This was very in that pop prog zone that I really was excited to get into at the time. There was like an 80s, 90s Rush kind of quality to it that I really responded to. It originally was going to be the first song on the record until Do Me was completed. And then it was like, oh, well, that's clearly the winner. But I just liked the dirty guitar sound that Tim got on it. This one was always, again, a lot of fun to play. We could kind of put it anywhere in the set and it worked. My only issue with this song is I don't think the vocals came out as well as they could have. And I'm talking about me now. I think I could have given a little more gusto. But I was still, kind of green on that. And it was a learning curve. This whole record was for me in a lot of ways, in terms of how to work in the studio. The lyrics to this song were inspired by Douglas Adams and Red Dwarf. A lot of British sci-fi in my head when I did it. It's a song about immortality, and it's a song about regret, and it's a song about wanting to go back in time and change the past, which was a frequent preoccupation of mine, writing-wise during that time period. And I don't know, I dig the song. I've always wanted to re-record an acoustic version of that. Maybe one day we'll do it.
One thing I think about is more so how that song has survived for this long, because when we were playing live more, even acoustic sets, this song would land in those sets. It has the framework that makes it easy to utilize that song in any environment. So it's an all-purpose song. Yeah.
It's high energy, but it's not so high energy that it has to begin or has to end. You can kind of put it wherever, and when it works. I dig that song quite a bit.
I was just thinking that clearly that riffage has influenced other Sons of Nothing songs too, to more or less of an extent. I'm not gonna call out which ones may just directly rip it off or not.
That's right. Y'all out there, do your homework and contrast and compare and see what you think. You're speaking Esperanto, or some language twins teach each other. Happy and smart don't go together. Esperanto. This was a song that I brought in, and it was going to be on the first record, but ended up being left off. And almost was left off this record too. As I recall, I had to do some persuading to make this song happen. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did the persuading, because I'm glad it exists. But I'm also glad I waited until this record, because if I put it on the other record, I don't think that arrangement would have worked really well. I really think it took everyone chipping in their 2 cents to make this thing all it could be. But Esperanto was written in the mid-90s. I wrote it with Rick Kreifelt. who also co-wrote a bunch of stuff on the debut record. And it was
We need to do a drop for like where we talked about Rick in the debut redo. You know,
right.
one of those
Yeah.
little things. Look here.
Yeah. A little thing. Click here for appendices
Yeah.
and such. Anyway, it's actually the first song that he and I wrote together, and it's the first song I had ever co-wrote with anyone. I'd been writing lyrics for a really long time, and I had dabbled in writing music and trying to write music and lyrics together. But this one was completely just, I had this vague kind of lyrical idea. Yes, based on the Saturday Night Live sketch with Mike Myers as Mick Jagger and Mick Jagger as Keith Richards, where the punchline is, Keith, you're talking in Esperanto, some language twins teach each other. That was just kind of a basic, kind of jokey idea I thought that would be fun for a song. And one day Rick was fiddling with some chords, and I said, what if this went over that? And then in that one day, we just sat down and wrote it in an afternoon. And it was really, really cool. And I always had a sentimental attachment to it. But it took this long to get a band to record it. So it took some doing, but we got it. And I'm happy that it's there. Even though if we could go back, once again, I would go back and re-record that vocal in a heartbeat.
There's an opportunity sometime.
Maybe. We already, with this record, you're already getting an updated version of this record on the digital release. This is going to be the 2009 remaster of the 2003 record. Or was it? No, it was 2013, because it was the 10th anniversary. When we first put it on Bandcamp, we gave it a remaster for the 10th anniversary, and it's been only on Bandcamp this whole time, unless you were one of the people who bought a disc at a gig back in the day. But even then, we did the original vocal for this song in the studio at Sound Image, and later just decided we weren't happy with it. And I wasn't happy with what I was doing with it. I was singing it too straight. It didn't have enough, there wasn't a lot of blood going to it. And so I was experimenting with different ways to do the vocal. And I arrived at this sort of mid-90s grungy sort of vocal. And that was what ended up on the record. To break free. And in retrospect, I don't know. Maybe it works. It's not me. Maybe it works. Maybe it worked at the time. I don't know if I would change it now, but I do know that it's something I have mixed feelings about.
What I do enjoy are the background vocals, and this is kind of, I don't know if this would be the first one or not, but this is probably the most blatant use of real throw in this 3-part harmony background vocals, which has become quite common in our musical language.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the first use of it. And if I recall correctly, it seems like we were even gang vocaling it on a microphone to sing those vocals, which in this era of everybody recording in their own room is, long forgotten. But man, the energy you get from pounding out those harmonies and dialing them in the room is pretty cool.
It was great. We did initially do the backing vocals at Sound Image with just the three of us gathered around a mic. And I don't remember if there were any overdubs later, but the bulk of it was definitely that. And oh boy, that was fun. That was fun.
Well, it was fun to realize that we had a group that we could pull that off, because it's pretty rare that you have enough singers to do that. And if you do, singing a lead is not the same as harmonizing. So to be able to harmonize is a big deal.
Yeah. And one of my goals, and one of the things I've always wanted to have in a band is every band I've ever been in has had multiple lead singers, and just being able to also blend like that it was a really cool thing. I was glad we could take advantage of.
This song was a slow burn for me, from my perspective, realized that I'm coming into this from being in 2 different bands with Tim, and these other dudes are new to me. And I'm kind of thinking, man, this Bowers dude is kind of weird. I mean, I've got this other music and then this Esperanto thing. I don't know what to do with it. So it was a slow burn, but what it turned into, I think, is pretty fun. And to the point we've made before, it's not like anything else. And that's pretty much our motif anyway, is to do what kind of hits us and inspires us at the time. So I like it in that regard.
Yeah. And the like I said, the sum of its parts You know, the jangly Johnny Marr guitar that Tim is doing, and the great organ solo that you're doing, and this Darren overdubs some like woodblocks or cowbell stuff over at the end, this percussion that lifted the last choruses into this whole other place. And it was a great example of synergy, and it all worked out really well. Okay, we're halfway through the record now, and I think that's a pretty good time to stop and take a break. One Left Turn is now streaming everywhere. So especially if you've never heard it before, go give it a listen and then come back and join us for part 2, and we'll talk about this stuff some more. See you soon. And now I don't have the pro version, so it's gonna cut at a certain point. I don't know if it starts from when I start recording or if it starts when I start.
It's probably going to cut when I run out of ideas of things to talk about from that time.
No, it'll cut as soon as your
So
first
I'm good.
one comes up.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, it will. That's true.
Hey, I just remembered, click.